welcome to the Rob Burgess Show. I'm, of course, your host, Rob Burgess. On this, our 246th episode, our returning guest is Ash Burgess. Ash Burgess has been a guest on dozens of previous episodes. For a complete list, check the show notes. Ash Burgess has a dusty degree in religious studies and an appetite for both high and low culture. She strives to celebrate the best of every season with her young children. Follow her on Instagram and subscribe to her YouTube channel. And now, on to the show.
I'm not the kind of person that's like, when you take your kids to the grocery store with you, it's like, we'll count this as like a day of math or something. I mean, I do, and I don't think that things like that matter, because I do think that they count in the sense that, like, yes, those things build important background knowledge and are chances to practice important skills, but also, like, I certainly hope you would still be doing those things with your kids, whatever educational arrangements you've made for them. Like, if your kids were going to a school that wasn't your home, you would probably still, I hope, take them with you sometimes to the grocery store and practice counting. I hope that you would still find a way to celebrate the eclipse, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a blurry line. That's the thing about homeschooling.
I can stop.
No. I was just gonna make sure you were recording because I feel like this is a good topic.
Yeah.
I think it's a blurry line because homeschooling is a part of your lifestyle, and it's not like a separate thing. Like, and I think it can be bad to try to make it too separate. Like, be like, we're gonna make a small classroom inside our house, and it's, you know, we're gonna have like a bell, and it's gonna be exactly like we're recreating a school that's not at our house, but it'll be in our house. Like, that's, I think, not the best. At least not for us. But at the same time, I think that overly leaning into the idea that everything can be counted as school can be a slippery slope that leads to, like, academic laziness and negligence.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, well, even with unschooling, which I'm certainly not, I think, qualified to talk about unschooling as an expert, because it's not like an educational philosophy that I've, like, leaned into as far as, like, what I want to do for our kids. It's something that I've, to some degree, experienced myself. But I think there are people that do it well, and there are people that maybe don't do it as optimally. I think that intentionality and purposefulness are really important in any sort of educational choices that you're making.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, I think you have to take a long, hard look at yourself when you decide, you know, in your mind, what are you counting as, like, a school day, and what are you not counting as a school day.
I'm just saying, I learned less on entire school days in my childhood than I'm sure our kids learned yesterday watching the eclipse.
Yes, and that may be true, but if our kids were going to school outside of our home, we still would have done all the same things that we did yesterday with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that doesn't necessarily mean that we discount the educational value of the eclipse, or say that it has to be excluded from what we consider to be homeschooling gains. I just think it's dangerous when you start overly relying on things that you should be doing anyway and counting those as, like, school too much instead of doing, you know, more rigorous academic work.
Yeah, I do think that too much of that gets people left behind.
Yes, I mean, it's like, sure. I also think that what else you do to layer with your life experiences can really go a far way towards, you know, whether it's really part of your schooling or not, to a certain extent. Like, for example, I would say if you experience a science topic, like, say you go to the aquarium.
Mm-hmm.
Just going to the aquarium is not enough.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe if you've read some books prior to going to the aquarium about some of the things you're going to encounter at the aquarium, and now you get to really see them, that's a little bit more. Or maybe if afterwards you do some further research to go deeper in some of the topics that you either, saw at the aquarium or, it made you think of these things and now we're going to learn more about them. I mean, I think really with a lot of science topics, that's kind of what it comes down to is, are you going deeper? Like, just making slime with your kids, technically, you could be like, it was science. But how much are your kids really getting out of it unless you have maybe read about why do these things that you're mixing together form the slime? Or what is the definition of...
I do think we did some background on what the eclipse was before it happened, and we talked about why it was happening and how to view it. And
but that's what I'm saying. So I mean, technically, I think yes, we did do some background. The kids and I did study phases of the moon.
We watched that video,
and we watched a video about what an eclipse is. I also had several books out from the library on them, on just general moon phases, and it did talk about what's an eclipse, how is this happening, things like that. And we have, in one of our science curriculums that we're following, we had just finished with a unit on the moon. So I think in that way, we really could count this as part of that. I'm just saying, I do think it's important to always evaluate when you're saying, oh, it was very educational. You just don't want to get lazy. That's all.
No, I know. But I'm saying if you were in school, they would definitely all go outside and look at it, and they would talk about it beforehand and do all the things that we did.
I mean, I think it would be pretty crummy if they didn't let the kids out to look at it. Although I guess I was actually reading about this today though, and it's interesting how there was a split of reactions. Some schools obviously, built the whole day around, surging out to see the eclipse. Some schools just closed, just didn't have school so that people could see the eclipse, privately or not or whatever. And I guess so then the school doesn't have to deal with it. Some schools, though, and some schools conveniently, some schools I think are on spring break anyway, so that's kind of an easy way out. Some schools actually were in session and did not let any of the kids outside to see the eclipse.
Wow, that's so mean.
I think the issue is, how do you make sure that all the kids are wearing the eclipse glasses? So it's kind of an issue of, liability and danger.
I guess.
Some schools, it's the parent could elect, yes, my child is allowed to go outside, and here are the eclipse glasses. And then it's just kind of, I guess, you're taking your chances. But it's, I mean, I think people just didn't really know what to do. I've actually been kind of taken, even though we've been hearing about this eclipse for a while, I was taken by surprise, not by the eclipse itself, we were anticipating it, obviously, but by just the level of general hype and excitement and interest that the general public had. Yeah,
the grocery stores it was when COVID first hit in certain sections, we had the eggs.
You said you had to buy the weirdly expensive
I had to buy
eggs.
the most expensive eggs I've ever purchased in my life because they were the only eggs left. That all the other eggs had been bought. I was just I was amazed. I was like, what does this have to do?
My sister said they were out of toilet paper at her store.
Bread, water.
Okay, on the one hand, there were people traveling to the area, so I guess that places slight strain on the resources.
I think that was a little bit overhyped, though.
I think
it happened.
I think you made a good point in the sense that the last time we kind of as a society experienced a collective event, it was so negative that maybe people just sort of impulsively, when this happened, were filling up their cars and hoarding, sanitizer and like cleaning products and toilet paper and eggs and bread and stuff. Just because it's like we've been so traumatized as a group. But I was surprised how many people actually were traveling to our area. It was very convenient for us because we happened to just live in the path of totality. Whereas I think some people actually were, riding on planes and driving for hours in their cars and stuff.
Totally.
Even, shifting plans. I saw somebody on Instagram who originally planned to fly into Texas, but then when they found out the weather wasn't going to be good there, shifted plans, and they got a flight to some other place, and then they drove to somewhere in, like, Vermont or something. So I think people really, like, some people really put a lot more into getting into the eclipse.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm normally a person who leans into, like, my general philosophy in life is always, like, I try to be, like, you know, like, holidays, like, why not celebrate harder? Why not have a better time? For some reason, I felt kind of, like, curmudgeonly about people's, like, level of enthusiasm for the eclipse, though. Which is weird because, like, when it actually was happening, I felt excited about it.
I was glad to be part of it, yeah.
And but just the lead up to it, I felt, like, annoyed.
Mm-hmm.
And I should feel heartened by the fact that people were so excited about a celestial event. Like, what more wholesome, you know, human experience could we get on board with? But for some reason, I was just irritated by people's, like, excitement.
I think a lot of people were doing a lot, and, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I remember I forget I think it was called annular eclipse, where it's, for some reason, I think the moon is further away from the Earth, and so it doesn't completely block out the sun. It just, like, mostly does. And that was when 1994. I remember that because I was in school, and we got the, like, pinhole camera or whatever out of a cardboard box and got to sort of see it. That's why I wasn't that jazzed to do that, even though it is cool. I'd have, like, memories of, like, I wanted to, like, have, like, glasses to, like, look at it.
Yeah, you didn't want to do, like,
but they were like, oh, look at the shadow on the ground. It's like,
that's probably safer, though.
I know. I know.
Like, we were talking about, like, you know, how do you make sure that your entire class of, like, second graders isn't blinded
for the rest of their natural life.
Even if just one of your children was blinded in your class, you would be really, that would be so bad.
Yeah.
But no, I remember that eclipse too because I went to some sort of a homeschooling event where I think the little viewers were being constructed, and I do remember thinking it was so cool that, and you know what I realized, sorry, this is a sidebar, but we should have done a disco ball to see the little moon shadows. I saw somebody had done that, and that looked really cool, because that was the thing I was about to say, is that I do remember seeing that there were little shadows of things on the ground somehow that looked like little moons everywhere.
Well, also, did you notice the kind of waviness, too?
Yes.
That was interesting.
Yes.
The light was doing a lot.
So I do remember that, and I remember that from being a kid, so I was thinking, you know, this is cool for our kids. They'll probably, at least the older 2 or 3 will remember this, you know. Maybe not, like, I don't know, but the 2 biggest kids will probably
definitely
remember this.
Yeah.
As, like, an interesting, distinct event.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
So, I mean, that's really cool. I was annoyed because it's like, well, like, my family down in Bloomington told me that people were, like, on the streets in the morning lined up outside the bars.
Wow.
And stuff like that, and it's just like, why?
Yeah, I was at the gas station, and there was a sticker on the pump that was like, are you ready for the eclipse? And I was like, what does that mean? Like, am I supposed to buy more gas right now? Are the gas pumps going to stop working? Are the deliveries going to stop? Why would I need to be worried about this?
Also, I mean, didn't we hear a thing about how our phones were going to start working?
I got a bookmark from the library along with 4 of our eclipse glasses that said, part of the information was like, your cell phone may not work. And
I do not remember my phone.
I looked it up later, and it's like, just because so many people are traveling to areas that aren't usually very populated,
that maybe it could, like,
that people using
towers could be congested or something.
So it's not to do with the eclipse itself.
It's not like the eclipse is going to somehow, like, the power of the moon will stop you from being able to make phone calls.
I do understand why people thought it was like the end of the world.
Yes, if I had no knowledge of, like,
if you were just out and about and you looked up and that was happening, you'd be like,
I would be
this
worried.
Is bad. This is very bad.
Yeah, it's like, either, you know, is a giant toad eating the sun, or has the sun died? Is it, like, did it die starting in one corner and it's just starting to sort of go dark over time, and a few minutes after it finishes going dark, is the world going to start getting colder and colder, and then are we just going to be like, well, it was nice knowing you?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and I did get, like, I was excited, like, you know, in the 20 minutes before it happened, and then, like, leading up to it, and, like, going outside to see it, I was excited. Mm-hmm. I just feel like the vibe was very weird with, like, how hyped people were. Mm-hmm.
But
I mean, it's cool because it's unusual and it's like a celestial event and everything. On the other hand, though, I feel like there are things that happen in nature that are just as exciting that people don't get excited about at all.
Yeah, I just saw a really good sunset.
Exactly, or like just like a rainbow, or
yeah,
like,
your brother took a really good picture of a rainbow the other day.
Yes, or like just the fact that all the trees are blooming and stuff right now. Like stuff like that looks equally as interesting. It's a little more common, but still, I feel like people don't get hyped about stuff like that. But for some reason, people were like losing. Well, I know you do, but I appreciate that about you. I just mean like the general population doesn't express as much excitement about things like that as I think maybe they should.
Yeah, that's very true.
But then for some reason, everyone just was like just losing it over this. It felt like.
Yeah. I read a quote once, and I don't remember exactly what it was. It was like, if you walked around Earth like you were an alien, you'd like marvel at everything, and you'd just be so overwhelmed by like just even the things you take for granted, like just normally, like just going to the grocery store would like blow your mind if you looked at it that way, you know. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was a little bit like annoyed with people, but it was a cool event, and I'm glad our children got to see it, and I know the older ones, like you said, will remember it. But
yeah, like they'll remember it, and I did think like especially like that period of time just where it gets dark and then it gets light again.
Yeah.
Like that's like
the street lights came on and the crickets started chirping, and
I think that was one of the funnest parts, is how the crickets got confused and were like chirp, 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 and then it's like getting lighter again, and they're like, oh, sorry everyone. Like,
apparently birds will start like singing their night songs too.
You know what is like one of the like most heartbreakingly like sweet things about birds?
What?
I was reading about how like a lot of birds, like you know how they sing in the morning when the sun comes up? You know, a lot of them, they're singing to let their mate know that they like made it through the night.
Aw.
Like, can you imagine if every day you woke up and I, like, sang you a song to let you know that I, like, made it?
I was not eaten.
Exactly. But also, like, how heartbreaking to be, like, a bird waiting to hear your mate sing in the morning and, like, wondering if it's, like, I mean, especially because, like, with birds, it's really, you know, could go, I mean, with people, it could go either way, too, but with birds, it seems a little more fraught sometimes.
Birds don't always make the best choices.
No, well, and I mean, they can just get, you know, I feel like so many things could happen with a bird, like just a strong wind could just be like catch you at the wrong angle on your wings or something, you know, so.
Yeah, well, birds are one of those numbers games kind of animals, you know.
Exactly.
Have a lot and hope that some of them make it. But, yeah, that's really cute. But, do you have anything else about the eclipse?
My eyes hurt a little bit, and I saw a bunch of stuff on Instagram this morning where it was like searches for like my eyes hurt, like at an all-time high.
Yeah, especially in the band of totality. But yeah, my eyes are a little bit. Apparently, it was safe to look at it during the eclipse, which is good because I did. But
just for like 1 second.
I just like looked real quick. I was like, I gotta see for a second.
Fortunately, that was not a huge mistake.
Yeah, right after I did it, I was like, "Oh, I should have done that."
Maybe should have not done.
It looked really cool, but I was like, "Oh man, that doesn't." Shouldn't probably stare at that. But I closed my. I don't see any like sunspots in my field of vision.
No, I think you would know at this point. Like I think my eyes just feel like tired, you know.
Oh yeah.
Like just a little bit, like almost a little bit sunburned, like the way you feel after like a day at the pool or something.
Oh yeah.
Like, just like a little tired. It's interesting though. I feel like people always talk about being affected by the moon, like the power of the moon, like either energizes people or makes them go like wild or like different things. I felt like good, but I can't really like the day after not today so much, but like today I actually felt very bad today, so maybe it's like swinging in the other direction. But I mean, like I feel like the night after the eclipse, I felt like pretty energized, but it's impossible to tell if that's actually like because of the moon or more just like it's exciting that something novel happened today versus it just being like a regular Monday, you know?
True.
So it's really like hard to say.
I feel like I see the moon in the sky sometimes though.
Yes. Oh yeah, you can see the moon during the day sometimes.
Yeah. I don't know, is it just not in the, like, field of vision always, or is it just not hitting it, the light hitting it right, or why can you only see it sometimes?
I feel like the kids and I read about this in one of those books that we got about the moon, and I'm not recalling
okay.
as well as I should.
I'm sure somebody can Google it.
I think it is one of those things where it's like technically could be visible all the time. It's just, you know, if the conditions are right.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's always there. It's not like it's not there.
It's not going away.
It's just normally, I think the brightness of the sky maybe just, like, distracts us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. See, it's interesting because the moon that we see... Because we always see the same part of the moon, right?
Yes, we never see the dark side of the moon.
So, it's interesting because that's the only time... No, it's not the only time. I guess when it's a new moon, you don't see it at all, right? It's totally out.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a new moon in that it's like totally not being... There's no sun shining on the surface of the moon that we can see during the eclipse. And every other time you can see it in the sky, it's usually not that.
I don't want to be, like, super greedy or anything, but I've always been a little bit jealous of planets that have, like, a lot of moons. Like, I guess that would be maybe challenging for, like, the way that the moon interacts with, like, the tides and everything like that.
Yeah, who knows how that would work then? I don't know.
Maybe that would
chaos, honestly.
Maybe that wouldn't be good, and who knows what that could impact.
Maybe the whole reason we have life on Earth is because of the moon, like, helping us, like, with the tides and stuff.
Well, and I was just then thinking about, too, how there's all kinds of things, even with, like, fertility of, like, animals, including people, and, like, the way that we're, like, you know, the moon cycles and things like that. So, there's all kinds of stuff that maybe having a couple extra moons could, like, really mess up. Still, I just have always thought it would be kind of cool to have, like, you know, 27 moons. Oh, that's moon, whatever, you know.
That would be fun.
But, like I said, maybe not. I haven't totally calculated this out to see how this might be, like, a mistake, but...
I don't know. I'm sure Neil deGrasse Tyson could tell us.
Yes.
But, I've been listening to Beyonce's new album.
I've been listening to it a little bit, too, which is interesting for me because I've never been against Beyonce. I've just never been someone who I feel like loves Beyonce, like, the most, like, the way... You know, I think some people are incredibly passionate about Beyonce. Like, it's like... Beyonce has, like, a very special place in their heart as far as, like, their feelings about performing artists. And I've never had that kind of an elevated feeling about her. Mm-hmm. But I have been enjoying this album. And I do have, like, some thoughts about it.
Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Well, just mostly, I mean, I've been enjoying it. I mean, honestly, maybe I've been enjoying this more than some of her other work because it's more my style of music. Because, I mean, I love, like, classic, you know, country type of music, country, folk, whatever you want to call it. I know there's, like, arguments about genre and, like, all that, and we can get into that, too. But this is more, like, these are covers of songs that I already loved or styles of music that I was already a fan of, whereas... More of her other music, maybe the reason I've never really gotten into it is that it's never been, like, my exact type of music that I was listening to anyway. Whereas I feel like this is, like, exactly the kind of music I like. So there's that. So, I mean, I've just been personally enjoying it. I've also been enjoying it in the context of the big feelings that people are having about it. As far as, you know, her as, like, a black woman artist. And that's something, too, that I feel like I've just become, you know, my thoughts on things like that have kind of developed and, you know, become more articulated and more specific over time. Just as far as, you know, I know people were upset because it's like, oh, she's black and she's taking this, you know, she's trying to edge into the country, and then it's like, of course, people clap back and are like, you know, this music has always belonged to black Americans as well. So, I mean, there's that issue, and then I also think, though, people feel very threatened by her as, like, a black woman in general, and I'm just am more particularly aware of that, you know, the older I get, and the more I'm aware of just, like, the world and the more I think about things. And it's like, Well, it's like, for example, and like, I don't think that the person I'm going to mention is going to like listen to this podcast. So like, and even if they do, you know, hopefully they'll just like quietly learn from their mistakes. So I'm not, you know, because I don't usually try to like call people out on like the things they say or whatever, but I feel like in this case it's okay. Like, I said something about this album, and then somebody was saying something about like, about how Beyonce's success is all, you know, owed to Jay-Z. And, you know, it's because he worships the devil, and so, of course, he's, like, made her successful. And I feel like that's so, like, it's so misogynistic and so racist that, you know, the only way that this black woman could possibly be this successful artist is if she has attached herself to a devil-worshipping man. Not because she, in and of herself, you know, is a great artist. I mean, and of course, when it comes to music, it's always a collaboration. There's always hundreds of people contributing to any recording artist's success. But let's not say that somehow Beyonce couldn't specifically do this without the help of a man or without the help of the devil. Like, I feel like that's exactly the kind of thing that people want to say, and people should just, like, sit back down. I'm just saying, like, I have never cared very much about her personal life.
But she also puts her personal life in her music, maybe because people care about it so much.
I also think most authentic musicians, at least supposedly, use their personal life as fodder for their music. Whether they're literally singing about things that have happened to them, or they are just, you know, using the emotions that they have felt in the experiences that they've had to, you know, infuse into a story that's not, like, literally about themselves. So I think that's kind of, any great artist is supposed to put themselves into their art.
Sure.
I just mean that, like, I don't, like, need her relationship to be a certain way as, like, part of my admiration of her music.
No, but that does relate to a song that is on this album, Jolene.
Good point.
Because Dolly Parton provides the intro to the song, and she references a previous Beyonce record from Lemonade, where she says that I heard about, she was like, I heard about Becky with the good hair, who is like an allusion to the woman that Jay-Z, you know, cheated with. And also we know this because there's a silent elevator video of her sister Solange beating up Jay-Z in an elevator while Beyonce stands in the corner because of this incident that then turns into the album Lemonade. But anyway, so she references this in the context of a cover of Dolly Parton's own Jolene about, you know, obviously people know what that song's about. But she changed enough of the lyrics that I thought it was like she made it her own.
I also felt like just her singing style was worthy. Which my peeve when it comes to people making covers of anything is when the cover is either exactly the same as the previous thing, because then it's just like, why? Like, we don't need to hear you doing karaoke of this song. Like, why? But even worse than that, I think, is when the cover is just kind of, like, worse than the original. And it's like, there was no call for you to do this. It's kind of like when somebody remakes a movie, and the remake is much worse than the original. And it's like, there was no reason that you needed to remake this. It was great. Yeah. You didn't just to be able to say that we've done this in modern times instead of whenever this was originally made or whatever. That's not a good reason to make something. Like, I think anytime you do a cover of something or a remake or whatever, I feel like there needs to be some call for, like, what could you contribute to this that is different or fresh or interesting or worthy of the material.
Totally.
And I feel like she, like, answers the call on that. You know?
Sure. Now, how do you feel about male artists covering female artists' songs and not changing the genders in the lyrics when they do?
I think it's fine. I mean, I think it's fine, especially if that artist acknowledges the potential fluidity of, you know, various genders and sexualities.
And also, you're playing a character when you sing a song.
You are playing a character.
You're not
but
saying
also,
this is me, necessarily. Especially if it's a cover.
Sure. But also, I'm just saying, like, I mean, because I think you're referencing, like, Jack White singing Jolene and, like...
Well, and I'm also referencing Luke Combs' cover, not that this is a country song, although he's a country artist, Tracy Chapman's Fast Car. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't change the genders from the original in that either, so...
I think it can be fine.
Yeah, I don't think it's a problem. I think it's interesting when they do, because it's so noticeable when people do change it. You know what I mean? I always make note of that. I'm always like, oh, they did that little thing there. But, like, I always notice it when they leave it in, too, because I'm like, oh, okay, they kept it original.
I feel like it's a potentially fraught area, too, though, because so often, I feel like you have to be careful anytime you, like, let's say this is a case where you're a man and you're doing a cover of something that a woman made about, in the original character in the song is a woman. Mm-hmm. You don't want to take a woman's song and then sing it as though it's about you, a man, kind of as though you're just stealing the best things that women have come up with and then, like, rebranding them as a masculine achievement. So I do feel like that's a consideration, too,
so you think
if
it's
you think about
stolen valor or whatever?
In a way, I think it could be. I think I'm not saying
You told me that men aren't supposed to sing I Will Survive, which I thought was extreme.
Did I tell you that?
I started to play that song on my guitar once, a couple of months ago. And you were, like, angrily stalking in the kitchen, and you said, this is the way I remember it.
I don't remember this incident at all.
Okay, so I was playing I Will Survive.
Uh-huh.
Of course, everyone knows the famous Gloria Gaynor song, later covered by Cake.
Uh-huh.
I was singing and playing that on my guitar, and I feel like I was like halfway through the first verse, and I just heard you say from the kitchen that maybe men aren't supposed to cover this song. And I was like, really? And you were like, yeah, maybe.
I feel like I would need to, like, go back into, like,
I want the home stenographer right now, because
it's not that I'm doubting that I said that. I'm saying that, like, that may have been, like, part of a moment that I was inside of. That,
please, like, read back the court reporter, please.
I like the Cake cover of that.
Well, that's sung by a man.
Yes, I'm aware.
Even though you say you don't remember the statement, what do you think now that I've said that you said that?
Well, I'm saying that I don't think that I think that overarchingly. I think maybe in the moment, I'm saying that I think there may have been extenuating circumstances leading me to feel that way in that moment that might have been, like, not, like, maybe that don't extend to every moment that I exist inside of. It may have just been in that moment due to personal feelings I was having due to, like, whatever else was going on. Okay. Then. I also just legitimately don't remember that.
I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just that you were saying that, and that stuck out in my mind. But I get what you're saying. But I think if people acknowledge where it came from, it shouldn't be a problem, right? What, like that a woman wrote this song?
I think, though, I'm not saying that I think it always should be a problem. I'm just saying that the people who are covering songs might be trying carefully to avoid having a problem. I mean, it's kind of like the push for, like, own voices in books and movies and things. Like, as far as, like, if you're telling a story, you need, like... And that's one of those things that I think is generally I think it's generally a correct impulse, but like anything else, it could be taken too far, and if you're trying to be sensitive to it, you might be overly cautious not to, like, you know what I mean? Like, I think generally the idea of own voices is positive, because so often minorities and women's voices have been stolen, and people's stories have been told by not them. So I think the idea that we should instead make sure that we're listening to the stories being told by the people is really valid.
Sure.
I think it can go too far, because at a certain point, are we saying that no one is ever allowed to tell a story about someone who's not exactly like them? Because that can have its own set of problems. And I'm just, maybe speculating that some of the men that are covering songs that were written by women don't want to accidentally be accused of appropriating those songs or stories, so they feel like maybe leaving them in the original.
That's legit. But that's a good segue into another cover that is on that album. She also covers the Beatles' Blackbird. But that's interesting too because Paul McCartney wrote that in response to the civil rights movement in America originally.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an interesting flip that now it's like there's all these racial politics still, and Beyonce, a black woman, is now covering it. So I think that's interesting.
Oh, I think that's very interesting.
But I don't have a problem with her covering his song because he's a white male, but I guess nobody has to worry about the white male. I
don't think anybody's that worried about the own voices of like white people. I think some people are worried about that, maybe the wrong people.
The wrong people are too worried about that, I'm sure. But I think the history of, I think she knew what she was doing, and I think she anticipated the reaction that she would get by like delving into country. And I think that she probably played it about as well as she could, honestly, because that Texas Hold'em song is incredibly catchy.
Oh yeah.
And the woman that plays banjo and viola as Rhiannon Giddens, who is a black woman who is...
Isn't she from the Carolina Chocolate Drops or something?
She's also a MacArthur Genius Grant. The one award I want to win.
Oh yeah, but no, I know the Carolina Chocolate Drops, I think is their name, because I remember family members that are into like the like more like, I guess I think of it as more like a country bluegrass kind of like jug bandy scene have like liked them.
Yes, definitely.
So I thought it was cool to see somebody from that world kind of getting big, and it's always good too if you're making something to pull in people from that world. You know, it's not like Beyonce just like was like, I will suddenly learn how to play the banjo. Which I mean, more power to her if she wants to, but like I think it's also okay to like pull in people that are already like doing good things, you know.
Also, that would be a lot on top of, I'm sure Beyonce's schedule is very packed.
I don't think she plays any stringed instruments.
Not to my knowledge, but I could be wrong. But we have been watching 90 Day Fiancé.
Yes, and we did want to talk about that because I feel like there's so much to say.
Yes.
We've been watching this for a while now. I don't remember, how did we even start watching this?
We watched it a few years ago, and then we fell off, or there weren't any new episodes. I think it may have just been when it started. And then we didn't watch it for a couple years, but in the meantime, many seasons came out, and then...
They made a bunch of spin-offs too, so there's like all these different
spin-offs, and there's
versions.
like... They stay with certain people after the 90 days, and they like film on their phones, and...
Well, because there's before the 90 days.
Yes.
Which is where an American travels to another country I guess the idea being that if it goes well, then they might end up on 90 Day Fiancé, which is where, you know, a fiancé is coming to America. But I do feel like we've talked about how the show has changed from those first two seasons in some ways that are, I think, kind of negative. Well, in that, I feel like when they first cast a show like this, they're probably just like, you know, do you want to be in a documentary series about an American who's, you know, marrying somebody from another country and bringing them here on a, you know, fiancé visa? That's a different crowd than, do you want to be on the popular show 90 Day Fiancé? Because I feel like now we have all these people that are like trying to make it as international recording artists and stuff, or like the kind of people that want to be on this show, and it's just a whole different vibe.
Meanwhile, 24 hours later.
Well, I had seen And I'm trying to very hard to use that correctly, because one of my pet peeves is when people say I seen as opposed to I had seen. I realize that could just be like a regional vernacular or whatever, but it's also one of my biggest like grammatical peeves. Like it makes me feel like my hair is being petted the wrong way. Like I don't like it. But I had seen a term that I was unfamiliar with, I think, because it was, newly introduced by someone, but which I thought applied very much to what I was trying to say about Beyonce, and people have stuff to say about her. So the term is misogyny noir. And I guess this term was supposedly invented by a woman named Moya Bailey, but I felt like it was a great term because it's supposed to describe the ways in which black women experience kind of a, specific to black woman intersection of sexism and racism.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I was thinking about that is because, that applies perfectly to what I was trying to say about how it's like how I had mentioned that someone said, oh, Beyonce, she's a billionaire now, of course, because she's, like, married to Jay-Z and he worships the devil. It's like, how racist and how misogynistic do you have to be to look at a successful woman and your immediate comment is she has achieved this mainly because of the man she's aligned herself with, and not just that, but it's, like, worshipping the devil. Like, she couldn't have achieved this without aligning herself with a man who worships the devil. Like, misogyny noir.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, you see what I'm saying.
It's like there has to be a conspiracy for this black woman to be on top.
Yes, or just even if... Because I know almost nothing about Jay-Z's personal life or whatever. So I don't know whether he worships the devil or not. I don't really care. I think that it's a general societal problem to think too much about who a woman has aligned herself with, which obviously who you align yourself with is incredibly important to your success. But we don't look at Jay-Z and say, the first thing we don't say about him is, oh, but look at the powerful woman that he's aligned himself with, allowing himself to shamble to the top.
Mm-hmm. I do think as I was saying before, I do think their relationship provides dynamic fodder for her art. And I almost feel like that's part of the reason that she's still, like, with him.
Yeah, and I'm not saying...
And I don't have any insight to their relationship. I'm sure it's, multifaceted and whatever, but, like...
I don't doubt that their relationship has a great role in her success. But, of course, she's choosing not only to get into that relationship, but to stay
I'm not robbing her of her
but to
agency
stay
by
in
saying that.
relationship.
Yeah. I'm saying she's going into it with her eyes wide open, and I'm fully willing to believe that Beyonce would be a billionaire all by herself without Jay-Z.
That's all I'm saying. And even if she wasn't a billionaire all by herself, if she wasn't with Jay-Z, I'm sure she would have picked somebody else to be with who could equally help her get where she needs to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just think it's important, to watch it when people are like, oh, immediately when we see this powerful woman, let's talk about the man that she's with, and let's also assume that somehow the devil could only be involved to help them get here.
I'm just saying, I think the more innocuous version of that is, I think she intentionally chose a very, like, man with a wandering eye, let's say.
Sure, but...
and I don't think, when it came out that he was cheating, I don't think anyone was that shocked.
That might provide her with a lot of fodder for her art. At the same time, might also
she's gotten about 10 years of music out of that thus far. So.
It might also be one of her personal challenges. I mean, let's not imagine just because she's a great artist that she doesn't have any problems.
No, I know. Everyone, the
like
champagne problems.
She could be very upset about what's happening.
Yeah, champagne problems, for sure.
Yeah. Well, but, I mean, it's like a meme I saw recently that was like, when life... It helps to picture that this was, the picture backdrop for this was a raccoon.
Mm-hmm.
It was like when life gives you lemons, squeeze the juice into people's eyes.
Nice.
But I'm just saying, like, she may be sad about certain aspects of her relationship, I don't know, because I don't know her personally, obviously, but she's at least made it work for her on some level, as have many great artists. I mean, you can think of, I think there are many great artist couples throughout history who've had
Johnny Cash and June Carter,
various interpersonal struggles.
Yes. No, and I'm saying, like, when Jay-Z said, "Me give my heart to a woman, not for nothing, never happened, I'll be forever mackin'," I don't think anyone should have been surprised when what happened.
But maybe she was not surprised, you know.
Yeah. I mean, she had to have gone to that with her eyes wide open. That's all. And I think it was worth it to her because she has, a beautiful family and she's incredibly successful. And I think it's like there's reasons upon reasons why you would be in that relationship. I don't think it was the key that unlocked her success.
No, well,
I do think that she takes the good with the bad,
This brings up another term that I heard recently that I think it was actually coined by Dan Savage, polyamory, which is like, it's not polyamory, but it's like you're tolerating the multiple partners of the person you're with. I'm
just saying, when it came out and he was in the elevator and there was that video, and I can't insert a clip here because it was a silent video, but she was standing on the side in the corner while Solange, her sister, was like beating the crap out of Jay-Z for what he did.
But do you think that's a sister's duty? Like, if you're Solange in this situation, is it your job to...
Sure. I don't blame Solange. I think Solange was totally within her rights to do that. Absolutely. I'm just saying it wasn't Beyonce. We didn't see Beyonce going that.
I think, though, there are also... It's a complicated network of cultural issues at play, too.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are, I'm sure, plenty of faithful black men. I think culturally, the idea of cheating is pretty heavily ingrained in some people's ideas of, like, what it means to be
It's a stereotype for some people.
I'm not saying even that it's just a stereotype. I'm saying I think culturally there is an aspect of that where someone like Jay-Z might see that as integral to, like, their idea of what manhood is.
He also, I know, has a very high opinion of the Kennedys, too, so, I mean... And, I mean,
yeah, and those are, like, the whitest people ever, so, yeah, it's not really necessarily...
But like, that upper class...
Yes, it's an idea of, like, a certain kind of cheating where it's, like, just understandable.
Frank Sinatra.
Or even
Kennedy.
to pivot in another direction, it's the mob guy and his,
Frank Sinatra.
Sure.
I'm the new Sinatra, as Jay-Z once said.
But yeah, I'm just saying, I think that some people, and you're right, it's a much wider thing. It's not specific to any particular race.
It's a misogynist thing.
Yes, yes.
I mean, but that cuts across...
Yes.
So many barriers.
Some misogynists hiding and all.
Oh, they're everywhere. Absolutely.
But it's definitely a thing. It's the idea that, like, of course you would have these other people.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of,
Yeah.
I mean, because, like, if you think about it, like, in The Sopranos, like, with Tony Soprano and his mistresses.
Perfect example.
It's a perfect example, I think, in some ways, too, because sometimes he doesn't even seem like he's enjoying himself with the side. It's almost just making his life more complicated.
It's just an extra relationship he has to maintenance.
But his co-workers, like the other mobsters, would be weirded out and think there's something wrong with him. Like, they talk kind of down about the guys that, like, don't have somebody on the side.
Mm-hmm. Like Bobby.
Exactly.
But it's kind of funny for Paulie because he is single, but he still has a groomer. It's like he can't just have a girlfriend.
Well, because I think it's like she's in this side class of, like, he would never marry her.
He would never marry her, but...
Which I guess distinguishes her from the person that he could possibly marry. Well, I mean, it's the same with Christopher Moltisanti, like...
But I think it's like he's on a track to marry Adriana.
He's on track to marry Adriana, but that's always something that's made clear. It's always, like, a clear distinction. Like, he brings her to, like, family events and stuff. Mm. You don't bring your Guma to, the family, like, barbecue or whatever.
Yeah, that's fair.
Also, they don't have to be Italian.
Yes. Frequently they are not.
Yes.
Frequently they're from, like, Eastern Bloc countries or, like...
Yes, which is a good segue into talking about 90 Day Fiancé.
I mean, Alex, still awake, are you?
I feel like there's things we can talk about, and then there's some other things that...
Alright, you have to be quiet, though. You can listen, but you have to be quiet.
I'll try to stay appropriate, but there's aspects of the conversation.
Alright, so let's set the table, because...
So we should just mention that we've been watching 90 Day Fiancé.
90 Day Fiancé. I also, it's funny because in a I can't. I would love to play my guitar, but not right now, baby.
Sweet request.
Damn it, any other night.
Yeah, but that's how she gets you.
Lilac, any other night of the week you want me to do that, I would love to do that. Please let us do this, okay? Alright, so 90 Day Fiancé, a show ostensibly about Americans who are interested in bringing someone that they are intending to possibly marry to America.
Yes.
They have 90 days once they arrive to seal the deal.
Yes. Well, the issue is that it's people that are bringing someone to America on a fiancé visa. Mm-hmm. And the fiancé visa only lasts for 90 days.
The K-1 visa.
So, yes. So, if you do the K-1 visa, you either get married within the 90 days, or you have to return to your country.
So
or I guess you could stay here, but then you're illegal and could be, in trouble and deported or whatever.
So there is an inherent drama because the clock is always ticking.
And that's the original plot. So the most generous description of the original show is that it's a documentary
This is like
series.
season 1, season 2.
Yes. Yes, I assume when they were originally casting the show, they were like, do you want to appear in a documentary about Americans who are... you're in a foreign relationship, you're trying to get married, you're going to do this K-1 visa.
Mm-hmm.
It since has bloomed into this whole universe of shows because we have the original show, which is, of course, taking place in America. It's somebody who comes here and is on this 90-day clock to kind of either get married or not. But now they also have the Before the 90 Days show, which is... about Americans traveling to some other country to meet somebody that they're in a relationship with. The presumption being that it could then turn into 90 Day Fiancé, because if that goes well, then they would probably propose and then file for, the visa, and then the person would come here and they'd get married.
Mm-hmm.
However... Well, let me get back into that in a second, but then I would also mention another incarnation of the show that we've also seen, which is... Was it like Trouble on the Island, or what was the name of the Last Chance Resort? It's more fun to speculate than to know, Rob.
Fine.
So we've talked about, right, first we started with, it's like, you're engaged, you're on the clock. Mm-hmm. Then we were talking about people where it's just like you're traveling somewhere to come see if the relationship
there's the main
works.
show, and then there's every other spinoff.
Yes. There's another spinoff, though, that we've seen, which I'm trying to describe, which is more like you've already gotten married, your relationship is going badly, but you can go on, like, a tropical vacation and receive some sort of, like, second-rate couples counseling.
I so want to talk about that, but let's back...
There's so much to say about that, though.
We have to back up. Okay.
Okay.
So, in a previous episode of the Rob Burgess Show, one of my guests, Bree Pruitt, and I were discussing how in 90 Day Fiancé, the pandemic... was a huge disruption, and it was funny because when we said that, we hadn't no episodes had come out. We were still in the first wave of watching that, because that's what we're talking about.
Watching
we took a couple year break
during the
now we are
tail
catching
end of the
up.
pandemic, where it's like people are still wearing masks,
Yes.
and sometimes people are saying things like, I have an autoimmune condition and I'm risking my life to go on this airplane to meet my girlfriend who lives in the other country.
But when things don't work out, I dramatically don't wear my mask on the way back, even though I still have the same condition.
It's interesting to see people, when people do and don't wear their mask at various times.
But anyway, like, certain people... exactly. Certain people are not meeting their 90-day people because of the pandemic.
Although I think that's an excuse.
Well, in the meantime, they're having sex with other people, so...
Well, okay, so here's the thing. So, the incarnation the incarnation of the show that we're watching right now is before the 90 days. Now, I think a significant difference between 90 Day Fiancé and before the 90 days is that, so as we discussed, in 90 Day Fiancé, it's an engaged couple.
They're already...
You filed paperwork, this person is coming to the United States. You're pretty certain in 90 Day Fiancé that you are intending to start a life together. It's like you're engaged. This person is moving here, and unless things go disastrously in the 90 days or however long it is that you have planned before your wedding, like you've already committed to this person. Like there's already been a proposal and engagement. It's really happening. Before the 90 days, the level of commitment between the various couples varies wildly. Some of the couples seem like they're very much like, I'm going to go visit this person that I've been in this online long-distance relationship with, and assuming it goes well, there's going to be a proposal. Like, they probably have bought a ring and packed it in their suitcase. Some of the couples are just kind of like, oh, I've been chatting with this hot person online, and I want to go meet them for a couple weeks on, like, a vacation, and maybe it'll turn out to be serious, and maybe it won't. Some of the couples aren't even couples. Some of them are just people that may or may not be being catfished.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very different, and I think there's a different level of quality as far as, like, who is getting cast on this and, like, what's happening. Because in the original 90-day platform, it is, like I said, people that are actually serious about each other. They've already met, they've already gotten engaged, they're on the same page about intending to build a life together.
Mm-hmm.
Before the 90 days, the people run the entire spectrum. You know, like, there are several people that they followed who are being catfished, and I've grown pretty annoyed with those storylines because...
They stretch them out, too.
They stretch them out. First of all, they could...
It's gross.
The producers could vet the relationship and know that somebody's being catfished.
They do. They always do.
Yeah, so they should just... I think they should choose not to feature those people on the show. But instead, they show that person traveling to another country, waiting to see the person, getting stood up, and then they do stretch it out, and it's a combination of, I think the show should just be like, okay, your storyline's over, but also the people, once they figure out that they're being catfished, instead of just being sad and mourning and then moving on with their lives, will either refuse to believe that they're being catfished and still try to meet up with the person who may or may not even exist, because they believe that somehow this person really wants to be with them, even though, like, all evidence to the contrary. Or, even once it's like, you're definitely being catfished, they'll be like, I feel that I'm owed a confrontation, and I'm going to track this person down and confront them about my wasted time. And
I think that'll give me closure. Like, that's always the thing they say.
Here's the thing. I think that it's a failed communication technique to think that you're owed a confrontation because you don't like something that somebody's done. Honestly, the only time that I think a confrontation is likely to yield any sort of, like, positive results is if it's with somebody that you actually have a very strong relationship with, and you have evidence that they're as equally invested in the relationship as you are, and you now need to confront them about something serious. Like, I'm trying to think of a good example of what that would be.
Hey, Mommy, you have Daddy's notes.
I'm trying to think of a good example of what that would be, but if you confront somebody about something, and you're invested in the relationship, and they're invested in the relationship, they might hear you out, and they might even positively change due to the confrontation.
Mm-hmm.
If you confront someone about the fact that they don't want to be with you and have wasted your time, they're not going to give you what you want.
Even if they give you what you want, what's it all mean? What does it add up to in the end? Like,
it's like, how dare you chat with me using these Facetune photos that you may have stolen from someone else on the internet.
People out there that want to take advantage of you. Well, welcome to the world. Like,
how dare you spend a year texting with me and also ask me for money, and then I sent it to you, and then you planned a vacation with me but then didn't show up on the vacation.
I just feel like that energy would be better spent moving forward.
I also I don't understand the idea of someone who's sending you signals that they definitely don't want to be with you, and then you continuing to think that maybe they actually secretly want to be with you. And
when
just
has it
got
ever
scared.
worked out where somebody is like totally like messaging you like through like their actions and words that they don't want to be into it, and then they're just like suddenly into it?
Like, I guess I'm trying to imagine myself in the situation where I've not met you yet.
And I'm ducking and dodging you like you're the plague.
Well,
while
sure.
taking your money in a foreign country.
Or I was more going to say, like, I was more thinking of myself, because usually it's the woman in the situation who might be catfishing or whatever. I'm saying, like let's say we've been talking online, and now you're like, I'm going to travel to your country to meet you. I would be very excited, and when you're like, hey, what airport should I fly into? I would be like, definitely fly into this airport because it's near my house. And, like, when you're like, hey, you know what I mean? I'd be, like, planning how I can run to the airport towards you. I wouldn't be like, oh, I can't tell you about which airport to come to. And, oh, don't come that day. You know, I'd be like, come as soon as possible. Not like, oh, I actually need to get my hair bleached that day, so can we try this in a couple months?
I'm watching my neighbor's dog. I'm so sorry.
My cousin has a soccer game I was going to attend, and so I won't be able to make it to the restaurant.
Yeah, sorry. See you in 3 years, maybe, ?
But these are, or like, people will literally be like, plan a vacation together where they're going to meet in Cancun, and the person doesn't show up, and they're like, I'm sad, but I'm still going to, like, now, instead of just being like, okay, hey, this woman, I paid for this luxury vacation, and I bought this woman a plane ticket, she didn't show up at the resort, instead of just being like, okay, this woman clearly doesn't want to be with me, instead, I will fly to Ukraine and try to track her down in the apartment building where she supposedly lives, to be like, hey, I know you're scared, but we can really make this work.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's kind of sad, and I wish they would not focus so much on those storylines.
Yeah, the best storylines are the organic ones that feel like natural tension that isn't being ginned up by the show.
I think probably the best storyline in the current season we're watching is the man who has gone, he has traveled to the Philippines to meet a woman, and he has an extra kind of edge in that he's deaf. Like, he was born with, I believe he said no hearing. He only speaks sign language. He doesn't read lips at all or anything. And the woman that he's with is hard of hearing. Like, she has a hearing aid because she had some kind of an accident as a child and her hearing was damaged. But she can still hear with her hearing aid, and she does not speak any sign language. She's learning, though. But she speaks pretty good English, and then obviously I think she speaks, Filipino. But they mostly speak, by texting back and forth, which is a huge barrier. But they do both seem like they're legitimately very invested in the relationship and want to be together.
Mm-hmm.
And they have faced some real challenges. I mean, of course, there's a language barrier, but then also, like, her mom, like, literally died.
Amazing.
And it was so terrible because a lot of times Americans will go into situations where they're going to a third world country and they'll be kind of appalled by how the people live, but also still like, oh no, what if this person is using me for money or whatever? And I feel like this guy was very cool about being like, he obviously doesn't have a lot of money, but like he does want to help this woman, and it's like understandable because like she clearly needs help. Like her house was already not in good shape, and I think she said it was damaged in some kind of a natural disaster, and
there was a typhoon, the roof was destroyed, there was a fire.
It was and the house is in such bad shape.
The father said he built it.
He built it, I think, a long time ago.
He said that the night before.
Yeah, I feel so bad. Okay.
Dun.
Yes, like
he's gonna regret saying that forever.
Oh my gosh, but okay, to be fair, like, I think he built it prior to the things that happened where it was terribly damaged.
I would never... how could you do it with yourself? Oh my god.
The mom... Okay, so while this guy has gone to stay with this woman in the house that's, like, not in good shape, that night, her mom fell down off of, like, the side of the staircase, and, like, part of the railing wasn't screwed in correctly, and she, like, fell and, like, died.
What are the chances? But at the same time...
I speculate that... I think that they didn't mention this on the show, but I feel like the circumstances of the show being filmed could have contributed to what happened, because, you know, this guy is staying in the house with the family, so I don't know if the parents maybe switched rooms, so when the mom got up in the night, maybe she was coming out of a different room than the room that she normally comes out of, so, like, just a slight miscalculation of putting your foot in the wrong place when things are, like, in bad shape could have just been enough to, like, throw things off.
Mm-hmm.
Still, that was a horrible turn of events. But this couple's, like, still making it work, and I think that the thing that I like about them is, though, that they seem like they're genuinely, like, trying to make it work and, like, pretty excited to be together. And they're not, like, overly consumed with problems. Like, I feel like...
Not right now, baby.
Sometimes the Americans on the show are overly fixated on the concern that the person from somewhere else is trying to use them either for money or to get to America. Something that annoys me about the way that I think a lot of the Americans on the show are kind of jerks is that they will become overly consumed with the fear that the person from the other country is using them for money and or just to get to America. Whereas I feel like in a lot of these situations, you need to accept that there's a certain exchange. Like, obviously, if you are in a more disadvantaged area of the world, part of your motivation for trying to find a mate in a more advantaged part of the world is the idea that you could start a new life in a place where you might have more opportunities. And obviously, if you're trying to get into a relationship with somebody from somewhere else and you want to bring them to your country, you have to hope that they obviously want to come to your country. But I feel like a lot of the Americans on the show, they want a situation where the only reason that this person wants to move to America is because of being so in love with this specific American, and not at all because they're interested in moving to America. And I think that's unrealistic and unfair to ask of anyone. Mm-hmm. I think you could want someone to be very excited about you personally and also to be psyched about the idea of relocating to the country that you live in. But I feel like some Americans just become consumed with the idea that it's like, oh no, you're using me for money and or to get to America. Mm-hmm. And it's like, all right. And it's also often the Americans that are often the most consumed with the fear that the person's just using them to get to America are often people who are also obviously leveraging the idea that people want to get to America in order to be with someone who is more attractive than anyone who is from America that would possibly go with them. Like, it's someone who... It's very unlikely that another American who's equally as appealing as this person that you found from a third world country would want to go with you. But you still want to somehow live inside this fantasy where the only reason they're coming is to be with you and not because they also want to be from America, you know? Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying?
These people do not want to move to the countries that these other people are from, that's for sure. And they need to quit acting like two things can't be true at the same time, and, you know, I just don't see them giving an inch to the idea that, like, you would do the same thing too if you were in their shoes. I'm
just saying, like, I think it's okay to be like, this person signed up for this dating site where they wanted to meet an American because they thought...
So did you.
Well, but what I mean is that this person who signed up for the dating site... You signed up to be the American.
That was the object of desire.
But the person signing up for the dating site hadn't met you yet. They had to just generally be like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I met an American that I wanted to be with, and then it would be great to, like, move to America to be with them? Mm-hmm. That could be okay, if you let it be okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
But some people, like, are consumed with, like, being bothered by the fact that that could be what's happening.
I love the blue of your eyes and the potable water in your house.
But it's
both.
I feel like it's very it's interesting to see how certain dynamics get repeated over and over in the show. I'm sure part of that is because when one couple's been popular, they try to replicate that couple by casting a similar couple. But I also think part of it might be showing certain trends. Like, for example, we have seen several couples where we have a, like, borderline, if not post-menopausal American woman dating, like, a late 20s to early 30s man from Africa.
Or the Middle East.
Or the Middle East. But I would say there's slight differences in the couples.
I can't go to sleep.
But,
Northern Africa, Southwestern Asia.
yes. But, so I wonder, though, specifically, what is it culturally that causes, like, let's say you're just, like, a Tunisian man. It's, what about your idea? Like, because I could see being like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to meet an American woman and move to America? What specifically, though, says, like, hey, I would like to meet a 50-year-old American woman with, like, overly tanned skin and, like, really bleached hair.
Who's smoked cigarettes for approximately 37 years.
Yes, like, what about that specifically is appealing? Like, and I can see in some ways it's unfairly probably just happening this way because if you're looking for somebody to import you to another country, it's probably going to be easiest if maybe they are established financially. And it's probably easier to find someone that's somewhat established financially that's 50 versus that's, like, 27. But a lot of these people are not even, like, financially doing very well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this will be, like, a woman just as you just described, but who, like, seems like, you know, she's financially living paycheck to paycheck, and also is, like, the meemaw to, like, 3 people that, like, live inside her house that she's, like, also supporting, like, not very well. I'm using their own words. I'm not trying to, like, just, like, make fun of people. But I'm just saying, like, it's not like it's, like, a wealthy, middle-aged woman who has money to spend. It's not like a sugar mama or whatever. It's more like a woman that's barely making ends meet, who's, like, mortgaged her house to travel to Nigeria to meet her younger boyfriend.
Yeah. Definitely.
But we've seen this dynamic many times, right?
Yeah, I get what's in it for the American part of the equation.
Yes, like, of course, it's like, this is probably, like, a much more, like, dynamic, exciting, youthful, attractive man than maybe, you know, who might be available in her small town and her age bracket.
Yeah, absolutely. But Soulja Boy, what is he doing?
Yeah, well, okay, so
What's
Soulja
his
Boy,
deal?
let's talk about how he spells his name.
This is not Soulja Boy telling the actual rapper from America.
This is, I believe this guy's actual name is Usman.
Usman.
I've heard it pronounced differently.
I've only heard it pronounced by older white women, so I couldn't say.
But he also goes by Soulja Boy. He's an international recording artist, according to himself.
According to him. I mean, he probably is at this point.
Well, he is. I mean, so I guess that's what was in it for him.
We're in America talking about him right now, so.
So we originally
international
met him when an older bleached blonde menopausal white woman had journeyed.
Baby real Lisa.
Yes, she had journeyed to be with him. He had written a song that may or may not have been about her.
That the video definitely didn't include.
The video definitely included
another woman who was more available.
She was very angry. She was so angry about the other woman being in the video that she made him have the video edited to cut the other woman out.
Cursed out the director of the video up and down.
Now, they actually got married.
Well, walked all the way to the altar.
But then something went wrong in their relationship.
We didn't watch the
We did
reunion
not see what had happened, but
episodes.
in the next season they were no longer married, but a different yet very similar woman was journeying to meet
It's like
him.
woman who commented on his YouTube videos is now taking the place or not.
This time he's admitted to her that the song is not about her.
Well, the name of the song is Zara.
And her name is not Zara.
Is another
It's
woman
like
in
Karen or
America
something.
who's like a black woman in America who's definitely not her.
I'm also confused about why he's not with Zara, the woman that the song is about. They've
He
never gone into that.
tried to rekindle that, and then there was some drama during the... Like, we don't watch the... I think it's important for people to know, we don't watch the reunion episodes at the end of every season
I prefer
because
just to be surprised the next season with what's
they are terrible in a way that the... like the show that we're talking about is often riveting in spite of itself, you know what I mean? It's like they've set up such dramatic circumstances that it can't help but be riveting, even if the people that are doing it are unethical, obviously, and like completely craven. But like that dynamic takes over completely in the season finales.
Well, and there's just too much rehashing and it gets boring.
That, and I just get so annoyed by the fact that they bring all these people together who have all these different storylines at the end of the season, and then they like are forced to like comment on
and they'll like form
everyone
alliances
else's,
and like
they'll like it's like
the other
you need
people.
what you just need to be quiet, and like it's like what
It's like you don't have a leg to stand on. We have all seen what you've done.
But at the
You
same
don't
time,
get to like chime in on these.
I, sitting here in my house watching this, have as much license, if not more, because I have more of a perspective
just a fellow cast
than
member
the
who's
fellow
never
cast
interacted
member
with
who
these people.
is just living their life and not like actually involved in the situation. I'm not involved in the situation either, but I'm also not on television telling like Teresa to like be quiet. You know what I mean? Like,
But here's part of the dynamic that I don't understand with what we're talking about, where we have the older American woman and the younger guy, usually from the Middle East or somewhere in Africa. They're inevitably, in each of these relationships, and we've seen probably like 3 or 4 couples that would fall into this pattern, there's inevitably an issue where the guy, it's very important to the guy that he can have a child, like biologically.
mm-hmm.
But it's like very apparent that
The childbearing years.
most of these women look like people that you would be very surprised if they were, even with medical help, able to like possibly carry a pregnancy or...
It's very apparent why they are Mimata 3 at this point.
Yes, like these are women that are usually, I think, in their 50s.
No shade. That's the season of life they're in.
Yes,
But like,
no, but they look like they're in their 50s and they probably did have children when they were like 20. Like
yes.
this, but
and,
not,
and many of them did.
yes, but I'm saying like
And
they
many
just,
of them have children.
just physically you can see that they've entered into a different phase of their, life where it would be unexpected for any of them to be able to achieve pregnancy. But so the question is, why are these men trying to date these women who clearly can't have children, and then being like, but you can have children, right? And often it will become this very awkward situation where they're like journeying to visit the person's, like the parents of the person, and
Well, baby
like, they'll have
Relisa
to-
only had one egg, right?
yeah, but first no, that was Angela. That was a different one.
Sorry.
But no, but it's usually like a complicated thing where it's like,
up.
usually these men are Muslims, and the American woman usually isn't a Muslim, but will have to like buy like an emergency head covering to like go and visit their like prospective in-laws, and possibly like go and like worship with them even though they like don't know what's happening, and sometimes they'll have to like buy a goat and other like various traditional things, but then the parents will be like, and you'll definitely be giving us some grandchildren, right? And it's kind of like
At the same time, what's her name? Who's the new Soldier Boy? potential Mrs.
Is her name
Soldier Boy.
Kimberly?
Kimberly, there you go. Kimberly is already pre-accepting before Soulja Boy has even accepted her as his girlfriend.
Well, that was very awkward too because
Multiple wives just for the purpose of giving him children.
Yes, Kimberly's solution is that
she's
he can
pre-decided.
just impregnate someone else.
Yeah, she's.
But at least that was like she was flexible and dynamic about her desperation to get with Soulja Boy, I guess.
It's a very generous description.
But that's a whole other side of the thing too.
Ugh.
Like the issue with Soulja Boy, like I don't understand why these women have to like get to him.
Yeah, he seems like such a nothing guy to me. His music is terrible.
He's like it kind of reminds me of in the Britney Spears book when she's talking about Kevin Federline's rap career and she's like, bless his heart, he thought he was a real rapper. He was working so hard in the studio. It's like, yes, now he is probably an international recording artist in that we now have to know about him in several nations, but
you will never not know Kevin Federline's name.
This is true.
You will never not know Soulja Boy's
But the
name.
same thing with Soulja Boy.
You will always SOGA.
Yeah.
I'm sure because of copyright infringement, cease and desist orders, he was sent by Soulja Boy.
But yeah, it's a very strange. I do have a lot of questions about like you want to be with this older woman, but you're like distraught by the possibility that she can't give you children. But also, just, like, what is even happening here?
Yeah.
Another dynamic that we see a lot, of course, is, like, the older American man who has found a woman that's more conventionally attractive and probably also more submissive than most American women that he could meet.
Mm-hmm.
Is now trying to, like, go to see her, and then maybe he is or maybe he isn't being catfished. And this woman, I would say in those situations, the woman is usually either from Colombia or, like, an Eastern Bloc country. Like, she might be, like... Either way, it's like... It's like, I'm a 55-year-old man, and I'm going to meet my 19-year-old girlfriend, Mahogany. She's definitely real. She's only asked me for money after we've been dating for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these photos that I have of her seem very, very face-tuned.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm very excited to meet her.
Also, the camera on her phone is broken.
Oh, you mean because she can send still photographs, but she can't video chat anymore?
The videos don't have any sound, so she could be saying anything to anyone, to any number of people, but she's definitely saying it only to me.
Yes. But then there are couples who are very real in the fact that they're definitely together and very much shouldn't be. Like, we would be remiss if we didn't discuss Gino and Jasmine, mostly because they have made it on to, like, somehow this couple has been on, what, is this like the 3rd or 4th season they've been on?
I just think they're willing to be on however many seasons it takes to, like, keep this going. I think they're very willing to be filmed.
And they really should just separate and repent separately.
They should, but they won't. And it's just his desperation. Like, they're both desperate in
but
just
in their
different
own
ways.
different ways. But it's also confusing how
The
their
desperation is the only thing. It's like a black hole. It's like all the light like goes towards like their desperation like swirls into like this black hole of like force that they have to be together.
So we've got Gino. He's in his early 50s.
He never takes his hat off.
Yes, like never. Like
Not even
he has
during-
a sleeping hat.
Yeah.
They once went to a couple's massage and he still wore the hat.
I tried that, but I was like 6, and my mom was like, "You shouldn't do that."
I was
And
like, take your hat off at the dinner table, Robbie.
Yeah.
But no, Gino never takes his hat off.
Never takes his. He's shaved his head already. He's bald, obviously. He's
He's
very self-conscious about it.
he is not well off, but he is miserly
Yes,
enough
he
that
is.
he has a decent amount of money in the bank. but he's like only
he's one of these poor rich people, which like is like he has no money ever, but he really has a lot of money. You know?
No, I think he has good savings, but it's only because he hasn't allowed himself to enjoy using his money for anything ever other than for like surging forward to like visit Jasmine. But then to like not
pay for her very expensive apartment.
He's paying for her very expensive apartment, but then like she still wants more money, so she's like secretly getting loans from her ex-boyfriend to pay for like
Dane.
more plastic surgery.
Yeah. She's getting the butt implants from Dane.
Okay, but like Dane only paid for part of the butt implants because she also used...
Is this like when you go online shopping, they're like, pay with 4 easy payments through Affinity or whatever?
No, because she used the money that Gino gave her to buy her wedding dress, and then Dane made up the difference, but she used it all on
What
the
about when
implants.
she wore her ex's wedding ring or
She
engagement
didn't like
ring?
the size and the resplendence of the ring that was
So
provided by Gino.
she already had one
So she
on
wore
deck.
her ex's... Yeah, she wore her ex's engagement ring because it had a larger stone.
On Deckington. Yeah,
Yes.
she had it there.
But meanwhile, it's interesting too because the double standards, because she'll be like wearing the engagement ring that her ex gave her because it's like a bigger carat size. But meanwhile, she once got into a like screaming, raging fight that I believed even included like throwing like glass bottles at Gino's head because he tipped the waitress at the romantic dinner that they went to together, and she was like, that was like cheating, that he like gave the waitress 20%. She was like, you will never tip anyone again when you're with me.
This is the same person who got upset about a trip to Legoland while 6 years ago, while you were with someone else in a relationship with that
While
person,
she
not
was
outside the
reading-
bounds of the
while she was
relationship,
reading
in the
his-
relationship.
While she was reading his emails,
Yes.
she went into a folder that he kept of like all his like travel arrangements and apparently combed back for like at least 6 years to get to the receipts from the trip to Legoland that he took with his ex, and was like enraged.
Yeah.
So yeah, Jasmine has some problems.
Yeah.
But Gino is also just continually like...
But again, the desperation, swirling around desperation. Like, he's desperate to be with somebody younger and hotter. She's desperate to get to America. She, you know what I mean? She's jealous, but he finds it exciting. You know what I mean? It's like, it just never ends. Like, it's this swirling dervish of, like, terrible, like, behavior. And it's just... Like, you covered Kingsley's eyes the other day because it was...
I don't want him to think that that's how normal people behave.
Yes.
Like, I don't want him to think that's how people talk to each other.
Yeah, it's just awful. But they're willing to be filmed, so they will be here forever. But anyway, this is back to what we were saying about season 1. These are not season 1 people.
Season 1 people were like the woman from America who met the Australian guy while she was on a trip to Australia, and now
you might know.
And the tension is like, will he be able to adjust to living in America because they have to live in like a little house that's in like her parents' yard, and it's like it'll be weird for him to be with her families in such close quarters, like real problems that like real healthy people might face.
Like, I think people in the like first seasons were more like people you might know. People in the later seasons are like, I'm an international recording artist, I really needed some exposure for my terrible band.
Yes. I also feel like they've, like, tried to cast people with, like, interesting, like, different physical abilities, too. Because, I mean, like we mentioned, there was the,
what about Stacey and Darcy?
Oh, my gosh. Okay, so I was actually going to talk about, somebody else, but
Who are
yes.
you going to talk about?
Oh, there's so many. Okay, so Stacey and Darcy, though.
But they're a gimmick, too. They're the twins.
Stacey and Darcy are a gimmick
Who
because...
cry.
Okay,
and
so...
date internationally.
Stacey is not actually even, like, the one who's in a relationship. Stacey, or is it Darcy? Stacey is the twin sister of Darcy. Darcy and Stacey are both, it seems, very invested in finding a hot international man to be with. Mostly, like, they've
to
mostly
varying
been
degrees of
concentrating...
success.
They've mostly been concentrating on Europe.
Yeah.
But the show is more following Darcy, because Stacy just kind of is in a relationship with a man from, where is her?
But she's an identical twins.
Yes. Okay, so they're identical twins. And they have a very unhealthy seeming relationship. Like, they've done something lucrative because they own, like, this very large house that they both got divorced. They were both previously married to Americans and divorced. Mm-hmm. And then they built a mansion to live in together. Even though they often seem to get into huge fights. And they're also very obsessed with looking the same. So, like, they're identical twins, but they also have both had a lot of work done. But they always go to their cosmetic procedures together. So, like, if one person is getting, like, cold, like, freezing lipo, the other person has to get it, too. And, like, if one person's getting, like, lip fillers, the other person gets it, too. So they
if
can
one person's wearing heels, the other person must unpack their suitcase on the sidewalk so they can find their heels, so they will also be wearing heels and not be lower than them, even though they're both perfectly aware of how tall they are, because they're identical twins and they're exactly the same size.
Okay, but the thing is that Stacy has been much more successful in that she just is engaged to... Where is Stacy's fiancé from?
Moldova?
No, that was somebody else.
Oh, let's see.
But Stacy is engaged to a European man.
It's like
a younger... Stacy is engaged...
It's in a landlocked country, right? It's like some, like
It was like one of the...
former USSR.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little...
satellite country.
Still, like, she's locked
Eastern
down with
Bloc,
this guy.
sure.
He's a younger man from somewhere in a Europe adjacent
Budapest
country. On the other hand, Darcy, when we first meet her, she is going to see her younger boyfriend from, was he from Where All the Windmills Are?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And...
Netherlands.
Yes.
Okay.
And... he was kind of like the ratchet version of, like, what's his name? Alexander Skarsgård? Like, just like a lesser version of that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And their relationship was very tense.
He's like Derek Sarsgaard.
Exactly. Their relationship, there were a lot of ups and downs. Like, when she went to meet his parents were basically like, he is so much better than you, so aren't you gonna... His parents were weird. His parents had, like, a lot going on, but they still basically were like, he's so much, like, hotter than you, aren't you gonna feel jealous being with him or something? But then, okay, so their relationship pretty much culminated in... They went to a windmill... And it was like a proposal, except it was a not proposal. So he basically proposed, except instead of saying, will you marry me, he was like, this is not a engagement ring. This is a ring of appreciation.
I'm sure if things had gone better...
I'm sure he already planned the proposal before she got there.
It would have been an engagement ring.
The trip was going badly. Instead, he gave her the ring at the windmill. But still, like, what a letdown. Like, you should not propose to someone and then be like, this is not really a proposal. Like, that's very awkward. She still accepted the appreciation ring, though, even though she was obviously very disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
They continued the relationship after she left. It continued to go terribly. Then he journeyed to the U.S. to visit her. But then there was, like, a fight, and I can't even figure out what the fight was about. It was, like... They were making dinner for, like, her children, and, like, she told him he was cutting the steak wrong, and he was like, I can cut the steak however I want to cut the steak. And then there was, like, screaming and driving away, and then... So that relationship, you know, that ended. So then she immediately starts a relationship with a guy from London who also was weird.
Mm-hmm.
Their relationship pretty much imploded immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, the whole time that they were together, she kept, like, trying to, like, goad him into proposing. And he kept kind of, like, dangling it out as a carrot, though. Because it was like, okay, so she made him cancel. He planned to take her to, like, an island or something. But then she made him cancel the plans so they could go to, like, a worse location to meet up with Stacy and Stacy's fiance to, like, then get in a bar fight. And then he was like, my parents got engaged in the island that I was going to take you to, and maybe I would have gotten carried away and proposed too, but now we'll never know. And then she was, like, super sad and cried, because as you mentioned earlier, she cries all the time. But then there was like an entire season of the show where their entire storyline was him slowly driving towards her to like break up with her.
The producers are incredible. Like, the amount of content they're able to create out of nothing.
Well, but it's wild though, because some people, it's like on a single episode, some people will like go ziplining through the rainforest and get engaged and like meet their like fiance's parents. But then on another episode, someone will spend the entire episode sitting in a chair at a restaurant waiting for someone to show up, and then the next episode will start and they'll just still be in the restaurant booth looking at their watch like, is she gonna be here?
Yeah.
So it's like the cutting and you're right, they milk the content, but it's also just like, it's bad editing. Like the way that they will cut things to take like too long or like
and
not
the cliffhangers, my goodness, like they're so uneven because like somebody will be at a dinner waiting for someone to arrive for like literally three episodes, and each episode is like an hour and a half.
But meanwhile, in another person's storyline, like I said, it's like they'll be ziplining through the rainforest and like meeting the parents.
Meanwhile, it's like we're back at the resort and we're still fighting.
But speaking of resorts, we do need to talk about, what is it called? Is it called Last Resort?
I believe so.
So this is once you've already gotten married on the show.
Yes. This is the couples that agreed to come back for the spin-offs.
But your marriage is in trouble. You can now go on the spin-off where it's like you go on the tropical vacation, and one of the couples on the tropical vacation, we only watched one season of this tropical vacation spin-off. One of the couples that appeared, though, only one of them came on the vacation. The other person just appeared on a large iPad that they would hold up, kind of like it was a person who was there.
As a remote worker, I was in awe that finally this was like representation, because it's like this is the first time I've ever seen a reality show where somebody worked from home. You're
on the reality show, but you're also just appearing.
and things are happening. They're on a boat. But, like, somebody has to hold the stand on the boat while someone else gets in a fight.
And there were some very tense moments. Like, these people are in couples therapy together, and, like, they're talking about like, deep issues,
but it's like,
someone's just a large iPad.
But you're an iPad. It's not like a picture-in-picture. I don't want people to think it's, like, the producers, like,
no, this is, like, literally someone has to hold up, like,
somebody literally physically had to hold the iPad in the scene. Hi,
it's me, Angela, and this is my husband, Michael.
And holding the iPad. Hi, Michael is shaking
also,
up and
there was
down.
a time difference.
Yeah, because it's like 6 a.m. where he is.
So it would always be like Michael had to get up at 4 o'clock in the middle of the night to come to this luau event.
Like he's like a morning radio DJ and has to get up at like 4 a.m. for some reason, or a trucker or something.
It's wild.
Sorry, I have to get up at 4 a.m. here in Nigeria to be remotely on this. Like, I don't get to be at the resort. For whatever reason, he couldn't be at the resort.
I don't know if there were issues with like COVID or visas or...
I think wasn't he a criminal?
Was there a reason why he could never... Because they had
gotten a criminal
married,
record?
But they got married, but he never came to the States. So was he not allowed in the country?
So there was some obstacles, as I remember. I don't remember. I thought they were legal of some sort. But
now, that's an aspect of the show that I have found fascinating, is just how much harder or easier it seems to be for certain people to get in or out of the country.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people, it seems like, are able to fairly easily... Not only just to do, maybe the fiancé visa, but also just traveling in general. Like, oh, I'm going to go see this person, or this person's going to come here. Other people, it seems like it'll be like years of red tape and applications and filing paperwork to try to get someone to go one place or another or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
One aspect of the show, too, that I think is very real in certain ways and very interesting is... It does give us a look at inside of people's homes in other places. And that's been pretty fascinating. Like, for example, I was surprised to see, and I mean, I'm sure, obviously we don't see everywhere in a country. We just see, certain locations, like where one person lives and maybe the city they live in. But, for example, Vietnam was looking better than I expected.
Yeah, I would totally, visit there for sure.
Of course, we were just seeing, in, a large city, but, still, it looked like, there's a lot of, development and a lot of, nice places and, lush parks and,
yeah.
well-developed and, clean-looking, streets and things. which I guess is just, like, I was a little surprised how well they were doing, just because, I mean, obviously there's been, you know, some trouble there in the past, and then also because of just how much worse some of the places in the Philippines are looking even than I would have expected. Like, it's worse than I expected, honestly. Like, I knew that things there were, like, difficult, but we've seen many couples where one member of the couple is from there, and it's just
the whole neighborhood, like, bombed out.
Yeah, like, it just looks incredibly difficult living.
Yeah, just the worst.
It's just when you're looking at a place where the lack of resources is so extreme and has been so extreme for so long that people just don't have
a
baseline to build on.
They just don't think they could do any better, you know. Like,
but I don't think you really could at a certain point because there's no material. Like, it's like even just as far as like how you're gonna like put a house together. Mm-hmm. There's just like the lack of like materials, not to mention lack of like economic, you know, job opportunities and stuff, but just general like lack of infrastructure to like make things, you know, to make improvements.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also, to me, very interesting to look at the food that's being served. Like, I don't like how, and I feel like they did this in certain seasons, and not they've, like, leaned into this at certain points and then kind of pulled back from this. When they try to, like, get the family of whoever the American is visiting to serve them, like, maybe the weirdest thing they could serve them, to try to like gross the American out and be like, oh, here, I'm serving you this thing that we will freak you out. I don't like when they do that. I do like just seeing the food. Like, for example, I have come to realize that I think I would really enjoy eating in like the Middle East. Mm-hmm. Middle Eastern food looks so good.
Even the like markets where I'm like, the spices are piled incredibly high. And they're all very colorful, and it's, like, totally impractical. It's like, why are you doing this? But, like...
It all looks so delicious and exciting, and you can just almost imagine how good it's going to smell.
Mm-hmm.
And the home cooking, too. Like, when you go, like... I'm always interested to see, you know... Not so much when they're, like, putting it on, like I said, but just the general, like, realistic, like, hey, you're bringing your fiancé for dinner, and, like, we're going to cook this meal, and, like... The home cooking looks so good.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, you know, some other places, there's definitely things where I would be, like, just...
Except for in India when they put the cow poop in the...
That was, like, more of a side issue.
Of course.
But no, I think, though, that, even if people are offering you weird food, something where I feel like Americans are often very spoiled is where Americans freak out about food that people are trying to serve.
I think people from America underestimate the power of just, like, eating something and not complaining about it, or just bringing a present somewhere where you're expected to bring a present.
Not bringing a present is one of the worst things that so many of these people have done. It's like,
you will never
Why would you not bring a present to the parents of this person?
You could pay literally like just a few dollars.
You could buy like a scarf at the airport and just be like, here, I brought this for you.
And check that box.
It's just a symbolic, like...
People just want to feel like you cared enough to like...
A lot of Americans
think about
don't
it
do that,
before you got there.
And it's a huge mistake. A lot of Americans will pickily refuse to eat something, and it's a mistake. And I'm like... I consider myself to be a somewhat picky eater. But if I was, once again, like I'm imagining the scenario where it's like you're from some other country, I'm coming to visit you, and
but you're trying to impress them.
I would be prepared to eat whatever it was that your family served me. At least like to take a few, demonstrative bites while you're like looking at me. I'm not just gonna like look at the thing and be like, I'm sorry, I can't bite this.
Yeah.
It's bad manners.
And even some people are like, oh, I can't eat the pork. It's like, eat the pork, dude. Like, you've eaten pork before.
Well, and it's like, I feel like sometimes
just because it's on a spit.
People get freaked out because they think they're going to be food poisoned. And while I think that's legitimate if you're like at a restaurant and you're like, this restaurant looks like it's not doing so well. If you're at the family home and they've prepared a feast, you just have to hope and assume that they have used whatever sanitation that has allowed them to continue living this long is hopefully going to transfer to, like, their cooking practices, and, like, you're gonna be fine.
I think you just have to be willing to take the L. Like, if it's, if you're willing to, like, risk it, I think it shows a level of trust. And I think that goes a long way.
A lot. You just need to eat a few
Nobody's
bites while
asking you to,
people are, like,
pick the bone
staring
spleen
at
or
you.
anything. Like, you just make the show of, like, accepting it. That's all.
Yes.
That's all you gotta do. You don't gotta...
Like, the moment where they're, like,
digest
looking at
every
you and
morsel.
smiling, waiting for you to take a bite, you just have to...
You're
just gonna have to bite it. Just... Yeah.
Do you want this or not?
Yeah, it's like you traveled all the way here and you're
You've
gonna, like,
already
sour your
sacrificed
entire
so
relationship
much.
with this person to, like, not...
Like, you're gonna... Right now, you're gonna have a problem.
I know, it's stunning.
You probably eat McDonald's, too. You know what I mean? Like, you probably eat any number of, like, unhealthy things on a daily basis, but it's like...
I also feel like, though, I mean, some American people really do have, like, a very limited diet. Like...
True.
I don't even think we're the most adventurous eaters, but I do think we, like, try different foods and spices and things, and some people maybe don't.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it is scarier.
I like passion fruit.
I like passion fruit.
Mm-hmm.
But I think some people, you know, if you don't feed your kids different foods and stuff, they might grow up not knowing how to react when someone tries to feed them, like, a exciting new fruit from, like, a different location.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of fascinating just to see different parts of the world, like, through the show. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I like learning about different cultures. That's cool.
I feel like, something that's interesting but also somewhat can be infuriating is, like, as they've been casting kind of more interesting people, because, like, like we were saying, like, it starts with more, like, very, like, sort of normal seeming people, and not that the people I'm going to mention aren't normal, but they're just, you know, a little bit less common. Like, we've seen several couples where there's someone who has something kind of significantly unusual about them. Like, for example, one couple where one member of the couple was a dwarf. That was kind of interesting to see, but a problem that that couple ran into, I would say, was actually similar to a problem that we're seeing with one of the couples on the season we're watching now, which in this season, it's a different issue, but it's similar, and I'll explain why I say it's similar, in that one member of the couple is transgender. The issue, though, is that in both of these cases, the more usual member of the couple, so, like, the person who's not the dwarf in the one couple, or the person who's not trans in the other couple, seems like they are experiencing some hesitation about getting into a relationship with the person. But also, it's, like, almost like they want to prove to themselves that they are open to it, but at the same time, they obviously are, like, struggling to, like, figure out for themselves if they can do it or not.
Or it's easier to fantasize through a computer or a phone than it is to be in person.
Yes, exactly. Like, well, for example, the couple where one member of this couple was a dwarf and the other member was, you know, a more average-sized person. The more average-sized person knew that the dwarf was a dwarf, obviously, getting into the relationship. But the relationship ended up having a lot of struggles where... And ultimately, kind of, they went their separate ways, with the more average-sized person saying to the dwarf, I just don't know if I can commit to, you know, all the, like, the struggle and the extra, you know, hardship of, like, being with, you know, a dwarf, basically. Mm-hmm. Due to, you know, just being with somebody who has certain physical challenges, you know, due to, like, size-wise and also, you know, I think certain, you know, physical movement things. And, like, I think that's legitimate in the sense that, like, of course you couldn't really know unless you're in person what it would really be like to be with somebody that has certain differences. at the same time, you're right. It's like you could fantasize through the computer, but then it's like when you're faced with the reality of always having to think about the fact that your partner's maybe in a wheelchair, or maybe you can't reach certain things, or maybe you shouldn't have booked the hotel that was up the flight of stairs, or maybe they don't want to go on the incredibly long hike with you. It's like flattering almost to your ego, like your sense of self, that you're like the person that could be in a relationship with this person, but then the reality of it is like too hard or something.
Or you have some shame or something about it.
Yeah. But I see the same thing happening with the couple this season, where one person in the couple is trans, and the other person in the couple has not ever been with a trans person before. And that they seem very conflicted about, like before they got there, they seemed like they were totally like, oh, it's great, I have no problems with it, it's not at all weird. But since they got there, they seem like they feel a little weird about it or something.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also like almost an ego thing, where it's like they want to think of themselves as a person who doesn't have a problem with it, but they maybe need to face the fact that they do, to be fair to the other person. Instead of continually insisting to the other person that they don't have a problem with it, but also acting like kind of sketchy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. But I mean, this is the problem with having a relationship with somebody through a computer, as opposed to, like, I feel like these issues would have worked themselves out very quickly in the initial stages of the relationship, had they had this relationship in person from the beginning.
Well, and it's kind of, I think it's different if you meet someone in person and then you continue the relationship long distance. That's very different than having your whole relationship exist long distance and not in person, and then finally meeting. Because even if there aren't any issues that you would need to work out, like about like whether or not you want to be with somebody who's disabled or who's trans or who's, you know, XYZ thing that's like different than a relationship that you've been with or feel comfortable with or whatever, I just think the difference between being with somebody in person is going to be very severe compared to what it's like to be with them long distance if you've never been together in person. Like, I think a lot of the thrill of a long distance relationship would be the excitement of, like, you know, like some of these people will be like, oh, we're on the phone for hours every day and we text back and forth through our entire day. And that's not really probably going to continue or be the same once you're in person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, I feel like you and I text each other sometimes, but, like, it's usually like, man, what should we have for dinner? Or, like, you know, but, like, it's like...
I send you funny memes sometimes.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, like, can you imagine if, like, I talked to you on the phone for 2 hours every day?
Or if we, like, had a video call that lasted, like, all night and, like, we went to sleep.
And, like, I nodded off while on the video
like,
call
you
with
wake
you.
up
And, like,
you wake the other person up because you've woken up in the morning or whatever.
It seems like that's almost an unsustainable level of, like, interaction.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, like, let's say you do video chat for several hours every day, as some of these couples say that they do. I feel like you're only doing that because you're like, we're in this relationship and we're long distance and there's this momentum. But once you actually meet and are trying to, like, build a life together, you might not have the time to do that. Also, if you're in the same place as someone, you can't exactly just be on the phone with them.
Well, it's like it's not an artificial barrier. It is a barrier if you're long distance. There is no barrier if you're, like, literally living with somebody.
I'm just saying, like, okay, like, let's say I was like, okay, Rob, we're gonna talk for 2 hours now, in person. That is different than if you were somewhere else and I was like, alright, Rob, I'm gonna talk to you on the phone for 2 hours and I'm gonna carry the phone around with me while I do other things.
Mm-hmm.
So if our whole relationship is built upon me, like, talking to you on the phone and you being, like, on the phone and I'm like, oh, I'm cooking dinner and you're like, oh, I'm vacuuming my floor. Once we're in person, it's not going to be the same. It's like, would you like to stand in the corner while I vacuum, and then you can, like, perch on, like, the kitchen counter while I cook dinner? You know what I mean? Like, it's gonna be so different that I often wonder if it's just, like, that's, like, too much of a transitional shock for people to get over.
Yeah. Maybe you just liked, like, having, like, a pen pal that you talk to. Like,
Yes, I think that's what I'm
was,
getting at. Like,
maybe you don't actually want to be in a relationship.
Or maybe the relationship that you loved was the relationship where you had someone to talk to for 3 hours on the phone every day.
That does remind me of the This American Life segment about a woman whose husband was in jail for a couple of years, and she said that the best part of their entire marriage was the time when he was in jail, because he would write these long, discursive, like,
Exactly,
like
though.
love letters to her every day, and she kept all of them, and it was so romantic. And then, like before he went away, he was, like, kind of a drunk and kind of a bad husband, but then he, like, went to prison, and he, like, was really, like, into her. And then he came back, and he was kind of a bad husband, and he was kind of an alcoholic. You know what I mean? They ended up, like, getting divorced. But it's like, looking back, it's like the best parts.
That was the good times.
Exactly, the good times was when he was like locked in cell for 18 hours a day or whatever. Like.
Well, also it's like doing life with someone is very different than just having someone be your sounding board to, like, chat to about life, but they're not actually doing the life with you. It's different. I mean, it's kind of like how I once read that a lot of couples suffered during the pandemic because part of what apparently is, like, the biggest bonding moment that most people have on, like, an everyday basis is, like, when you've been separate, like, maybe you both went, separately to work, or one of you went to work and one was at home, or one of you went somewhere and one of you didn't. When you come back together and then you chat about your, like, petty grievances that you've experienced throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
That's, like, a huge bonding moment for people. So not having that time when you've come back together to chat about your petty grievances, because you were both just kind of there the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's different even, like, in the pandemic, like, when it was, like, during, like, lockdown, is what I'm talking about specifically. Because even now, like, let's say you both work from home, or, like, we're both usually home, but we will have separate things going on sometimes that we can then talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's like, okay, the world's just shut down, and now we're both just gonna, like, watch TV, and then we're both just gonna, like, make dinner, and then maybe we'll both go for a walk together. You don't have that chance to tell each other about your, like,
mm-hmm.
your own things. But I feel like that's kind of similar to, like, if you're having this, like, on the phone or video chatting or whatever relationship, it's like, it's all gonna be like, well, like you were saying with, like, the woman in prison, it's like, we can have these long conversations about our feelings, and then we can detail our petty grievances, and you're gonna listen while I tell you all about my coworker and how awful she was, and how dare she say that thing to me, and I'm kind of casting myself as the main character in this epic drama, and you're there for it, and you're caring deeply about it, and you're invested in hearing about it. That's not really the same if you're actually just in the house together.
Mm-hmm.
So I do feel like that's, like, probably an issue for some people.
Mm-hmm.
Then again, I'm also really startled by couples who have a huge language barrier.
Yeah, having an argument with somebody in a different language that I don't speak would be very difficult.
Or just, like, connecting on the level where you could know that this is, like, your person. If you have to, like, use, like, a translator device to, like, text back and forth
mm-hmm.
and be like, would you like to go out for dinner?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I do.
Or you have to hire somebody.
Yeah. I feel like there's so much more to say about this, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know.
You want to talk about books, though?
I did want to talk about books a little bit because, I've always been super into reading, but it's interesting because I feel like now there's, like, have you picked up on the vibe of, like, there's kind of this backlash because, like, reading has become such a popular hobby suddenly that now people are all like, oh, reading.
I think people should calm down. There's so many worse things people could be into.
I think people are upset because there's, like, people that are, like, spending so much energy in, like, cultivating, like, a reading aesthetic.
Okay.
But yeah, it's
There's
like,
so many worse aesthetics out there than reading.
This is like a
Fine.
real no, I don't think
care.
this is a real problem. I just think
fake problem.
I think it's amusing because I've just been like quietly reading this.
Well, no, because like when I go into Barnes and Noble, I see a table of like book talk.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so it's a thing. But I mean, none of the books on the table that they say book talk for like jump out at me as things I would want to read. But like, I'm not mad that other people are like
at least other people are finding
experiencing joy in the pages of a book. What kind of person would I be?
Although I will say that something I've enjoyed recently is watching YouTube videos that people make where it's like, I read this terrible book talk book so that you don't have to. So it's like, I'm going to tell you about this book so you can, like, save yourself from having to read it.
Yeah.
But I have been excited because recently you've read a few books, or are in progress of reading a few books that I've, like, also read. So it's always fun to be able to talk to them, or to be able to talk about them with you.
I'm not to the end of a couple of them, but...
Yeah. But you read that House in the Pines book.
I did.
What did you think?
That was good. Suspenseful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that it was well done.
It's funny because I read that book right at the beginning of like a hot streak of thrillers for me, which was funny because right before I read that book, I remember I had gotten to a point where I'd read just like one too many thrillers that was so underwhelming that I thought to myself, you know what, I'm not going to waste my time reading thrillers anymore. And now like the last 8 thrillers that I've read have been fantastic. It's just like one hit after the next.
So where are they all?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know. I just finished... See, that's the thing about thrillers. Sometimes you read them and they just, like, fly out of your mind. But I do take pictures of them all and put them on my Instagram so I can, like, actually find them later to look at, except that I have no idea where my phone is, so I'll never be able to see. I'll never know. I just... Let's see. First Lie Wins was good. That one that you're reading now, the, what is that one called? Listen for the Lie. That was pretty good.
Better Unscrupulous Podcaster?
Yes. Which, okay, I was so surprised that I liked that book because I generally am very annoyed by and over the whole idea of, oh, this is a true crime thriller about a podcaster. 'Cause, well, didn't you jokingly say the other day that you should write a book about, like, a podcaster who has a podcast about food trucks or something? Because I do feel like podcasting is the new food truck owner.
It was a failed architect.
Yes.
Who had started a food truck.
Yes.
And then now makes a podcast about their food truck from the food truck.
Actually, I think the idea of making the podcast from the food truck, actually, there's something there. I think you can probably, like, mine.
Nobody steal that idea until I can.
But no, I get annoyed by, like, how it seems like every other thriller now is about a podcaster. And I get that it's, like, it used to be, like, a journalist. Like, she works for a small-town newspaper and will now investigate this crime. It's even more plausible to be, like, oh, he has a podcast and he will now investigate this cold case or something. It's just, like, kind of a yawn, you know?
There was a spider crawling behind Ash's head. I had to help it go outside.
I feel totally calm and fine about this. No, honestly, I'm not as scared of spiders as I am of some other things. Like, if that had been, like, a snake or something, I just wouldn't even be, like, sitting here anymore.
I saw a snake the other day.
What kind?
I think it was just like a garden snake. It was just a little green snake. It didn't look dangerous at all. It was over in the tall grass, is where you expected it to be.
That pretty much checks out. No, but I know, like, Emerald is, like, spiders are her top fear, I think she told me.
Mm-hmm.
But, no, spiders, like, I would be freaked out if it was like a poisonous spider and it was like on my arm or something, but the idea that spiders exist doesn't really bother me that much.
I just, just wanted to help it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm glad that you moved it because it was kind of like up behind my head.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really want it to like go on me in the night or anything. I'm just saying like I don't need to like burn our house down or anything now.
I'm all good.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, I know.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like there are certain like aesthetic, like there's certain like book like niche aesthetics that people like fall into.
What do you mean?
Like, I know that there are certain people that read like they're called like hot girl books, for example.
Mm.
They're like about like depressed white people, I think, mostly.
Mm.
But I'm fascinated by people that buy lots of books that they haven't even read.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I started watching this one content creator on YouTube who has like an entire room in her house full of books. And she said that there's a couple thousand of them that she's not read yet.
Wow.
And she was doing, like she did in one of her videos, a tour of her books. And she'll just buy, like, 7 books by an author just because she thinks that she might like them. So she's like, I think I'll just buy all, like, 7 of these.
Wow.
But then it's like, she's also trying to read more of her books, though. So she's doing this thing where every month she draws 5 names of books out of a jar, and then she has that month to read all of those books. If she hasn't read any of them by the end of the month, she has to get rid of them. And then, I mean, I guess if she doesn't like them or whatever, she can get rid of them too. But it's to, like, motivate herself to have read all her books. 'Cause even though she, like, seems to just buy a lot of books that she hasn't read yet, I think her overarching idea is to have her book collection be all books that she likes and has read, you know. It's just, I think she's outpaced herself in, like, the purchasing. Although she made an interesting case for annotating books. Because I've always been a little bit so-so on the idea of, like, you know, when people, like, heavily annotate a book.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've always thought maybe that seemed a little excessive or something. But she did say something which I was kind of like, aw, you know, that's worth thinking about. Like, well, she was talking about her mom, and she was saying that her mom is dead and died when she was, like, fairly young. And she said one of the reasons that she annotates books is because she wants, when she dies, she wants to leave her library to her children. And she was like, I would give anything if I had, like, a copy of my mom's favorite book that she had, like, annotated. So, like, she wants, not only does she want to be like, when I die, I want my children to inherit all these books that I've loved, but, like, to be able to have, like, annotations by her, you know, in the books that she particularly liked. And I do think that that's kind of cool when you think about it that way.
No, I have a copy of Man's Search for Meaning that I read that I got from the free shelf at the North Manchester Public Library, and
Nice.
whoever had it before read it at least 6 times in their life like in various years, and they had like different pens that they would use for each time.
Nice.
So you knew which time that they were reading it of, and they would like mark certain sections, be like, yes. And like, you know, this is important,
that.
underline. Like, and it was like you knew in 1968 they thought this was important. In 1972 they thought this one was important. 1985 they thought this one part was important. You know what I mean? So.
Well, and imagine how cool it would be, like, to have a book like that.
I had no idea
that
who this
had been-
person was.
But think how cool it would be if that had been, like, your grandfather or
Yeah.
something that annotated that book. That would be, like, one of your, like, priceless possessions.
Of her, yeah.
So, like, thinking about it that way, I feel like that made me think more about, like, how there could really be a place for annotation.
Yeah, no, I get it. I've never felt that much license to, like, deface a book like that. I don't know, like...
Me either. I think that's part of my thing, too, is that I'm very, like, careful with my books.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I always, like, for example, I take the dust covers off of my books before I read them,
Mm-hmm.
so they don't get messed up, and then I, like, slip them back on when I'm done reading. So, I mean, that's kind of the way that I'm living. But, like, I still, though, I might think about it. Like, it's, like, also, like, not something I could really do right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like it's tricky enough for me with, like, the kids and everything to manage to, like, hold a book open to, like, read it. Just with, like, I feel like my hands are literally busy. So, like, then also adding in, like, holding a pen and, like, annotating doesn't really seem like something I'll be doing right now, but, like, that might be something I might look into doing at some other point in my life.
Mm-hmm. Like when I take a great interest in mushrooms.
Yes, like when you're, like, starting your new life as, like, a mushroom enthusiast, I'm gonna be, like, annotating my books.
Yes.
But it's good to have, like, plans for, like, you know, the future.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes I think it'll be, like, really sad when our kids are all older. Our life is so, like, vibrant and crackling right now.
I hardly have a moment to myself.
I know, and, like, as much as that can be frustrating sometimes, I also think it's gonna feel sort of lonely when they're all
Sure, it
busy
won't
with
always
their
be
own
like
stuff.
this. As much as we think it will.
Well, especially, like, having, like, a little baby. Like, because even when our kids are just slightly older, there's things I could do. Even, like when our youngest is, like, 4, there are things I could do, even though 4 is still pretty little. Whereas now it's, like, he really needs me to, like, hold him all the time.
He's such a baby.
He is such a baby. Well, I told you how I was reading about how humans are classed as carrying animals.
Mm-hmm.
So we just need to carry our babies all the time.
Yes.
I still prefer thinking of myself as, like, a giant battery charging station.
Yes.
And he is, of course, the battery.
Mm-hmm. Fueled by milk.
Yes. But he also just likes, I think, just, like, laying his head, like, against my chest. Like, I think, like...
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you know those charging stations you can get for your phone where you just kind of put it on top of the pad and it recharges? I feel like that sometimes, too. Like, I think he just needs to, like, be upon me. You know?
Yes.
Only because he's the best baby. But when I'm less busy holding the nicest, softest baby in the world, maybe I'll try to, like, annotate some of my books.
Sure. I'm sure he'll appreciate that when he's not drinking milk.
Yes.
Was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
I don't know. Was there?
That was a pretty good episode.
Yeah, I think so.
Thanks for being on the Rob Burgess Show.